Okay, so what we're talking about today is the ideal setup for production and streaming. If you're doing any kind of live streamings, webinars, if you're just recording yourself, podcast, any one of those things, if you are into production of content, this is the ideal setup. So let's dive in and I will explain generally the setup and then I will go much more in details of what I have here, why and how it works. The first part is that I divided the desk to a working space where here I generally work. I do emails, I do calls, I do all the things that are just a normal day-to-day work. And then in this side I have my control in my whole life in regards to streaming. So we have two areas. Area number one is work and area number two is streaming. And all I do when I go into streaming, I change this screen. I turn this screen into here and I pull this thing into here and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screens that I'm working with. And what I have here is my control, which I do everything through this iPad that has the touch portal, and the touch portal have different pages to control different parts of the production. Then I have here my camera, it's a Sony 7C, that I look into this teleprompter, and on this teleprompter I will have the presentation or the Zoom call or whatever. So when I talk to the person, I talk into the camera and I see what I want to see. For example, the presentation or the Zoom call. And then here, usually I have all the extra communication. So comments, any kind of things that are part of the control. Here on the right, I have a screen that connected to the Atem Extreme. The Atem Extreme is a unit that control 8 HDMI inputs, which we'll explain much more in details later. So here I have an iPad. This iPad is basically I'm using as a drawing board. And you will see that if I will move into this camera, which is camera number 8 in my case, I see the iPad and whatever I do here will show there, and of course it will be transmitted into the stream. So I have 8 inputs, which we'll explain later. 8 inputs, totally controlled from here actually, so I'm hardly touching this machine, although I can do a lot of things from here, but I'm hardly using it. I'm using most of the stuff from here. So if I want camera number 1, camera number 2, and if I want to do some other things, I can create all kind of different effects here. And again, we'll explain much more. It's a very advanced wow setup. Once you fully understand it, you will want it. Okay, now the sound. The input sound, the microphones. I have this microphone here, and I have that microphone there. They are both controlled by the Apollo Twin. And basically the Apollo Twin allowed me through the software to control the quality of the sound. So I'm using the software to put all kind of plugins. So for example, this plugin is a special plugin that takes the sound of the room and cancel the echo. So I don't need to dry the room, which means I don't need to put all kind of sound cancelling bricks. And instead I'm doing it electronically. So this is really amazing. And the second thing that I'm using, Voice Meter Potato, which allows me to control all the inputs, decide on the levels, do all kind of effects and so on. This is one mic, and this mic, when I work on my normal job, I will use it. When I finish with that, I can just push it aside. And the second mic is this mic. Again, I use it only when I'm streaming, and when I finish with that, I can just push it away and it's out of the way, or I can leave it there. And again, both of those mics are controlled by this amazing Apollo Twin. Okay, so let's start actually from the secondary PC. So the secondary PC have 3 monitor outputs. Each monitor output have a splitter. So one side goes to the actual monitor and the other side go into the Atem Extreme. So basically I will look at the screen and I will see something here and it will show on the Atem Extreme. So if I will decide to stream that screen or part of it, I will be able to do that. So that will be screen number 1, okay? The second screen will be a screen that I will use, but I'm not actually sending into the Atem Extreme directly, not directly. The third screen is a screen that I don't actually see, but I send to the Atem Extreme, and it's there as monitor number 2. This is the one, this is monitor number 1, this is monitor number 2, and if I will just change it, I will see what it is. So it's moving from one side to another. This is actually number 3, input number 3, which is the camera behind the teleprompter. So we have the first PC, which is the secondary PC, and the job of that PC is to give me a background processing. Okay, now let's go to the main PC. The main PC has 4 screens, 4 physical screens, okay? The first screen is this one here, and I'm using this thing to get some information, to control the sound, and to do just normal day-to-day work. Then I have my main screen here. This is my main screen. And on my main screen, I will do emails, I will do writing, etc. Then I have this portable screen here. And this screen here is there to give me auxiliary information. And the fourth screen is the screen of the teleprompter. In the day-to-day, I don't really use the portable screen. But I use it when I stream, of course. Okay. All of that, including the Atem and including everything else, is controlled through this touch portal. I cannot say enough good things about touch portal. It's unbelievable. So for example, if I want to start all the things that I'm starting when I just come in the morning, I don't sit and start each program separately. I just press a button and it will start all the things that I want to start. Okay? And it's totally controlled by me. And it's really simple to set up, and they have amazing support, and it's just beautiful. So this is the touch portal. It controls my life. It's actually replacing my wife when she's not here. So what else do I have at the working station? Of course I have a keyboard, and this keyboard has the ability to control more than one computer. So obviously it controls this computer, and if I just change it from input number 1 to input number 3, it controls the secondary computer. And it has this thing that Logitech has this thing that's called flow, that if I move my mouse from one computer to another computer, the keyboard will move with it automatically. So I don't actually have to press any buttons, and it's moving from one computer to another. Because I have many screens, it's a little bit of a headache to move all the way to the corner, so I'm not really using it. What I'm using 2 mouses, and I'm just changing here quickly when I want to move from one computer to another. The second thing that I have here is a USB multiplexer. I have a recording device here, which is just a device that I had, so I keep it. I don't really use it because if I want to record anything, I'm using the voice meter, an amazing, unbelievable product. I should do a simple video to explain how it works, because if you try to figure out online how it works, you will get lost for 2 days. But it's really simple. You need 20 minutes to understand. If you fully understand it, if someone will explain it properly in 20 minutes, you'll have 100% understanding. So any recording that I want, I'm doing through this voice meter. One more thing. I have another camera here, a Brio, a Logitech Brio. And the purpose of the Brio is sometimes I don't want to set up the whole setup of working with the main camera and looking straight at the person in the eyes through the teleprompter, etc. Let's say I want to do a Zoom call. I can press this thing and start a Zoom call, but I don't want to move it and work on the side, because maybe it's a kind of a working environment, it's not a streaming. So what I will do, I will use this camera. So I can select that camera, and I selected this camera right now. And what I do, I just raise it. So the person, I still look at the person, it's still respectful towards the person, but because it's a small camera, etc., it doesn't affect me with working with what on the screen here, with this screen or with that screen, and I can divide my work between the screens, still looking at the person. It's really important to have this personal eye contact with the person, and most people doing the mistake that if they want to work with someone at Zoom and he's on this side of the screen, they look there. But when you look at him, you don't actually look at him, because him, as far as you're concerned, is the camera. So I always put the person that I'm talking to right in front of the camera, and I talk to the camera, so it seems like I'm talking to him. And the results are much better connection, it's much more personal, and they of course smelt. Now, generally when I'm working here, everything is more dark. Everything around me is dark. So what I do, I dim all the main lights around me, and I hope you will see it in the video. So I dim all the main lights around me. This is one. So what I've done, I've installed underneath here LEDs, 24-volt LED, and underneath there bright LEDs that I can control from the bottom here, and I can set up the intensity that I want. So I can set up the intensity that I want, how bright I want it. And the same thing here, I can set up the intensity, how bright I want it. And generally, I like it in such a way that it's not so intense. I do that something. So I have enough light, but it's calm, and the attention is on the screens, not on everything that happens around me. So that's the lights. Okay. Now, talking about lights, when I'm on camera, obviously one of the main things is to have good lighting. So we have here two amazing key lights. So I've got a key light here, and another one is side light, and then I have at the back here 3 different lights. And let's turn them off. They are all, of course, controlled remotely. So this is light number 1, this is light number 2, and here I have the backlight. This is the shadow light, and this is another backlight. Those lights have two purposes. The first purpose is to create just the atmosphere, but more important, when I'm using the green screen, a key for successful green screen operation is proper lighting of the green screen. And what I have here at the back is, as you can see, by press of a button, I have this green screen going down. And those lights make sure that the light on the green screen is constant. And the Atem Extreme, doing an extremely good job of keying out the green out of the pictures and putting you in without jumping, without all kind of weird things that you usually see when you see some kind of a Zoom call or when Zoom doing it. Now granted, Zoom doing it without an actual green screen, which is quite amazing, but it's not high quality. If you do it with a green screen, if you do it properly with the proper lighting, the result is like wow, and we will see it shortly. We'll see how we're setting it up. And I like the fact that it's all nicely going up and down, so I can have the office as a presentable office with a nice logo, etc. And of course, the logo, like everything else in this office, the lights behind it is remotely controlled. So every day I have a different viewpoint on life, and based on that I put different atmosphere around the logo. So on my desk I have this wireless charger that has 2 purposes or 3 purposes. Number 1, to charge the headphones. Number 2, to charge the phone. And number 3, it's built in such a way that I can adjust it and work with that if I talk to someone over WhatsApp call, that video WhatsApp call, it's there and I can talk to them and look at them, and they still see a nice view. And generally when I talk to them, if I'm not doing it through the computer, it's really easy. I don't have to hold anything, and I can at the same time do whatever I need to do if it is part of the call. But tip, if you're on the phone, be on the phone, not on the computer. And if you're on the computer, be on the computer, not on the phone. Because the definition of competent is the ability to do what you're doing when you're doing it. No one, other than your wife, can multitask. And even she doesn't do it only at certain times of the day, not at night. Okay, let's move to the streaming section. Okay, welcome to my second home. Okay, the streaming section, the first thing that I do, I organize my setup here. So I have this thing, is where I have my chat, etc. This is where I have my control. I'm generally not worried about these computers here and screens, although they're doing a lot of things, but I'm not worried about them because they are controlled. And since I don't really use those things, I move this mouse away. I put this mouse here, and I have a secret keyboard here. And this keyboard is what I use in an actual webinar or in an actual seminar, or when I do a Zoom call, or when I'm totally at streaming mode. How does it all start? It all starts here. So I have lots of shortcuts here, and the shortcuts are set up with all kind of macros that do all kind of things. I will get into that separately, or maybe in a separate videos, more on the technical side of how to set up each one of those things. But the first thing that I will show you is like that. I press this button, basic setup, and I'm telling the system, look, I'm going to start a webinar. So telling the system I'm going to start a webinar, it will start all the things that I want to start. In that case, I'm going to start a webinar with GoToWebinar. It's starting GoToWebinar for me, and already. If, for example, I'm going to start a restream, I'm doing restreams from time to time. The difference between a webinar and a restream: a webinar is I'm sending information to specific people that are logging into me, and a restream is different people logging into different platforms. So I can restream to many platforms like YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, etc., etc. We have different platforms, and in order to do all of that, there is few tools that I'm using. So again, in order to do everything automatically, I press the button, and it will know that I'm going to do now a restream, and it will give me the correct page to control the restream. It will start the different tools that I need, and all of that thing will be done press of a button. So let's look at an example of how do we use a switch, an HDMI switch. So I have the HDMI switch here, and it connects to the camera and the screen. So in a normal situation, the computer will send the screen data to that screen, which I will see on the teleprompter. But if I press the button, it will switch to the camera, and what I see here is the camera. So the data sent to the screen here, and I see the camera rather than the computer. Now this is very useful when in a case like that. It's also useful when you have more than one input. For example, I have my amplifier. I have a Boss amplifier that has some kind of an interface. It has an interface that you can set up all kind of things. So I have a switch that says most of the time on the main screen I will see my computer, but if I will press the button, I will see the Boss amplifier, and I can do all kind of things with that. So I can take this screen and go into the Boss amplifier, and provided that I'm on the wrong port, on the right port, of course, you'll see that I have one time, this is my screen, and on another time, I have here the Boss setup. So I can go here to the Boss setup and to option, and I can set up my Boss system, all with the press of a button. And when I press the button, what I actually see here is the second computer. This is the second screen of the second computer, but that same screen, if I will press it, I will go back to the main computer. So what we have here is like that. The main computer connected to a screen, and I can see this is my usual stuff. I don't need to see the other screen of the second computer because it's connected to the Atem, and I can see it on the monitor of the Atem, and I don't do anything with that. It's just giving me things for the system, which we will see later how. So I don't really need it, but if I do need it, I can switch the input on the screen, and that input will be for the second computer, but also for the Boss. By pressing a button, I can select, okay, now I want to see the Boss. So with relatively limited properties or limited assets, which is one screen, I have 3 inputs that I'm controlling. Amazing. I'm sure now you're saying, wow. Okay, so let's count how many screens we actually have. How many inputs? So I have on the secondary computer 3 screens. Then I have the Boss system, which is a screen. Then I have the main computers that have 4 screens. So I'm now on 8. Then I have the iPad, which is 9. Then I have another iPad, which is 10. Then I have the camera, which is 11, because the camera is just an HDMI input, yes? It's 11. And then I have just one more thing, or actually 2 more things. I have the Brio, which I convert into an HDMI, and I have a device from Blackmagic that I can transmit data across a LAN or across any network. So I can transmit from here to another office in a different country, in Florida, and they will get that streaming at an amazing quality, and I can use it for recording. So that's a lot of screens. So let's look how I'm actually doing a webinar, okay? So a webinar starts by starting all kind of different programs that I need for the webinar, and of course, as you already know, I don't like to press a lot of buttons, so I will press the button and it will start all the things that I need. And what do I need in this case? I need OBS. You'll see this is OBS. If you don't know what OBS is, it's basically a tool that's doing something that's similar to the Atem, which means it controls all kinds of inputs, but it gives you a few other things. So I'm using OBS, and you will see for what within a second. I'm using, obviously, some kind of a webinar software. In this case, I'm using GoToWebinar. I'm using my system to control the sound. So this is the Apollo Twin interface with all the noise cancelling, amplifiers, controlling all kind of the bass of the sound of my sound, etc. So all kind of things, adding some kind of reverb and all kind of announcing the sound, okay? And let's start a webinar. So I'm starting a webinar here as a practice. So the webinar will start and I will show you how it's actually going to go down, okay? Okay, so now we have the webinar started. The next thing that I need to do is to start OBS on the other machine, because on the other machine I want to do some other stuff. I will explain what I want to do. So I'm pressing this thing and I'm starting OBS on the second machine from here. So it's not connected to the touch portal cannot actually control two machines, but through web services or through a WebSocket that I'm opening, I can actually control the other system, and for that I'm using a system that I will show you the software. It's an amazing software. It's called, here we go, this is the software, and it's called streamer.boot, and you can see here that I have that computer, that second computer connected, and I have all kind of things going on. So why do I need an OBS on another computer? What's happening is that I have the chat box going at different setups. I want the chat box to be in a different place. So what I do here, to key out the chair as well, at green, and as you can see, the keying up is perfect. You cannot see that this is actually a green screen operation. It's really perfect, and I can just press a button and it will be the actual presentation, or if I'm in this mode, I have a different setup where here at the top I see myself, so actually I talk to them so they will see me. At the bottom they see the presentation, and here is the chat. So I've got my keyboard, I work with the keyboard here, and this is my control. So when I'm working with them, I talk to them and there's a presentation going on, etc. And I want to draw, so I just press here and I say draw. And I talk to them, I still talk to them, and when I talk to them and there's comments, I can see the comments here, so there's not much of a movement. I still looking at that direction. And if I want to present it in a different way, let's say I want to do something like that, where on one side, here I show the drawing, at the top is the presentation, on the left is the comments, and here they can see me. And if I want to change, if the importance change from the drawing into the presentation, I can press this button, and now the presentation becomes the main thing that I'm talking about, and the drawing as a reference is still there, so they have the reference to what I drew, to what I spoke about. And like that you have a really high quality system. Now, another thing that I'm doing is I'm actually doing something quite amazing. I take this thing there, so this is, if you know PowerPoint, so you know in PowerPoint you can have the presenter mode, and this is the presenter mode here, which tells me what's the next thing that I'm going to say. So in a presenter mode I can see the next thing that I'm going to say, and here what I'm going to put on this screen is how they see it. So I see it in full screen how they see it, and usually what I do when I do a presentation, I remove this camera and I put this thing like that, so I can see exactly what they see. So if anything goes wrong, I can see it's here, and I can see the quality, and I can see everything properly. I can say, okay, show them my picture, or my video, I'm just talking to them and they see me. The Atem is doing such a good job of keying out the green screen that the quality is perfect. You cannot see that you are talking about a green screen. Regardless of the background that I'm putting on, any background that I put on, it's like unbelievable quality, the quality of the green screen. You can see that. Amazing. What else I can tell you here? I control everything from here. From the music, to the volume, to the colors. I can change the colors of my face. As you can see, I press the button and the color has changed. I can make it lighter or darker, more red, more saturation, less, all by press of a button. So everything is controlled through the Atem Mini, and it is quite amazing. So all of this thing is programmed by me. So it's once you know it again, it's really simple. And there's two key programming parts. Number one is the programming of the touch portal. You can see this is the page that I'm using for the live. And each one of those things have programs that are going on, that I've programmed all of these things. Yes? Each one of those things is programmed and I've done it. But this thing is running something that's called macros. And the macros are basically a sets of commands that I'm running on the Atem. So it's very easy to write a macro. You basically macros you record. So macros you record. You go here to macros, you say macros, and I can take a place here and click record, and it will record every step that I'm doing. Okay? But this is just the basic, because there are a lot of changes that you need to do. For example, you've recorded the macro and there's something that's not really working as you want, or you recorded the macro, but for example, you'll have a look here. So when I'm moving from one thing to another, you see that it's moving. This thing is not a macro that you can record, it's a macro that you need to create. And how do you create it? What you do, if I look at the macros that I just downloaded, and if I want to do something a bit more complex, I can rewrite things that I want to happen by myself. So I can redefine the sizes, I can move things slowly. So I can actually control anything that's happening on the Atem through that macro. And while it looks complex, it's really not. It's really not. It's quite simple. It's basically each line here is some button or value here. And you just need to know how those buttons or values are called. And if you know how they're called, you can play with the values. It's really straightforward and easy. It's not complicated. And the end result is that I can go into something like that. Let me take this thing. Something like that. And tell here, run a macro. So I can run a macro that I've recorded, and it will run the macro once I press the button. So it will do all kind of this and this and then in a second by me pressing a button. So I run one macro, wait a bit, run another macro, and then I say if something happened, do that. If not, do that. And if this thing happened, do that. So quite simple. Looks complex? Believe me, it's not. Once you understand it, there is not one person that cannot understand it and learn it, because the bottom line is basically telling the system, do this, wait, do that, wait, do that, wait, and sometimes you need to do if statement, which means if this happened, that happened, and a few other things, but it's really simple if you're willing to confront it, if you're willing to look at that and to learn it. Anything that you understand the component parts of, you'll understand the whole. If you feel that something is complex, it's only because you're not willing to learn the component parts, the thing that build the whole. So if something looks to you complex, it's only because you are unwilling to learn the component parts of that thing. And the component parts of things are always simple. Always, always, always. Now, let's talk green screens. So green screen is something that, if you understand the concept, it's quite easy. And I'm going to do it, not showing you the automatic method of how it's all set up, but I'm going to show you the principle of green screens, and you'll see it's nothing, it's so easy, once you understand it. Okay? So what you do with a green screen, you take a layer of, let's say I want to show a PowerPoint, okay? And then I want to show myself But I want to take myself, only myself. So I will take a picture of myself or a video of myself with the green in the background, but the system will know to remove the green. Okay? So let's see how we're doing it. What I will do, I will say, okay, so there is something that's called upstream keys. Upstream keys, it's the different layers. There are upstream keys, and generally upstream key is a key that you generally think about it as a temporary key, and the downstream key is something that's more permanent. But at the moment, it doesn't make much of a difference. And they are organized 1, 2, 3, 4, one on top of each other. Okay? So if I say that my upstream key number 1 is media player 1, okay? What is media player? In the Atem, you have this a place to put different pictures, and you can put them as pictures, or you can put them as videos. Not through the Atem, there is a bit of a trick, but you can do videos or picture. And basically, I will say here, listen, what my upstream key number 1 is the media player. Okay? Now, upstream key number 2, I would want to put as my Sony camera. Okay? But I want to do it as a chroma key. Okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say to the system, look, this is your background, yes? And what I want you to do is, I want you to look at the background, and of course I need to do this. I want you to select the correct input, the camera, and I want you to pick up the color that you see in the background. So I'm picking up the color and it's green, okay? Now, once I've done it, I can remove it. So what we see now is I am separated from the presentation, yes? And now I can do all kinds of things to improve the quality of the keying. So there is a different kind of setting that you can do, and you can keep it. And the beautiful thing is that you can do something like a flying key. I can move my position wherever I want. So I can move it, for example, I can move my size. I can move my position up and down. So let's say I want to put myself all the way there. And I want to put myself here. And voila. It's quite amazing. And all of this thing can be done that I can do it by a press of a button. I don't need to reset it up or reset it up, because Atem has an amazing ability to create macros. There are, I think, 100 macros that you can create, and you can run those macros through the touch portal, which is amazing. Now, the key for all this thing is, obviously, cable management. If you don't manage your cables in an amazing way, the mess is unbelievable, because there are a lot of cables. Let's go and have a look. Welcome to cable management. So what we have here is, I have the computer, okay? And there's a lot of things that coming into the computer. That's one hub of cables, and there are a lot of things that going into the back of the Atem. All of this thing needs to be organized, because otherwise you will have here mess of cables. So how do I do that? You can look here at the bottom, and I think I can help you with some light. I have here all kind of power strips. All of them are controlled wirelessly, okay? And then every single cable is glued. So when I'm running the cable, I'm running them one by one, and I'm gluing them, and you'll see that they're all glued. I put double-sided tape. Generally, I'm using clear double-sided tape, and I'm running the double-sided tape, and I'm gluing those cables in as straight as possible method. What I have here is also an amazing idea. I have here a place to put all my hard drives and to put other stuff. But many times when you have such kind of a shelf, what you have a problem that you leave here a small space for the cable, and the plug cannot go through it. So if I want to put the plug down, it cannot go through. Or if I want to put a connection with the plug up, it cannot go through. So what I've done, I've put a hole here with enough space to the cable to go through. So I can put a plug in and move the cable through the hole and through here and move it into wherever I want. You get the idea? So this is an amazing idea on how to solve this thing. Now, another thing that I have is this kind of a cage down. So all the extra cable I'm putting into this cage. So when I have extra cable, I'm putting into this cage. And as you can see underneath here, we have a party. It is fun. Those things are switches or HDMI splitters. There are all kind of power supplies. There are all kind of extensions. There is a party. And that's about cable management, part 1. We'll always need some cable on top of the desk. And what I do, the same idea, these two types of cables that I have cables that needs to be moved. So I'm using those things that I can change the distance. So this is for cables that need to be moved, so I can actually move them. And cables that don't need to be moved, there is double-sided tape again, and I'm gluing them exactly to the position where they need to be at. I always leave a little bit of extra because things are moving. But again, I'm gluing. Everything gets glued with double-sided tapes. So everything is hidden as much as possible, and when it's not hidden, straight and glued. That's your motto. Okay, now let's talk about muscles. The arms. The arms are the arms that holding the different screens. So the first thing is this thing. Usually when you buy from Amazon or wherever, you buy those arms. The problem with them is that they're too low. If you want a screen that will be at your height, you need to raise them. So what I've done, I created from a stainless steel this kind of thing that has a bracket here that stop it. And I've got this one because this one used to be, I used to use it as two arms separate. Later on I didn't. So what you have these holes here, and I can move this thing to be at any position that I want, okay? The screens are sitting on this stand, and the second one sitting on that stand. As you can see, I've done them in 3 parts because if I wanted to do something a bit lower, I could, without having something sticking up here, but eventually, obviously, I needed to have it at that size. Now let's look from the other side for a second. What I want is, I want to be able to look at my screen, and I want to be able not to, if it will be here, I will be all the time looking down. I want to sit straight, and that the screen will be right in front of me. For that, the screen needs to be high. And that's why you need this special arms, special poles, because without this, with the normal arms, with this very short pole, it's not tall enough, it's not high enough. So this is what I've done for here, and that worked amazing. Second arm, teleprompter arm was a mission. The problem was that I wanted a big teleprompter, big screen. I didn't want this small 10-inch screen that you can hardly see. I wanted a full-size screen, big teleprompter. Big teleprompter is heavy, and if you want the ability to adjust it, it's a mess. So what I've done, I took what you get, which is just this thing, and I've added here a support, and I've put an arm here, and I can change here the size by pressing it up and down. So I can define in which angle it is to me, in which angle it is towards the wall, and I can adjust whatever I want, and you'll say, why do you need to adjust it? Because you do. Nothing stays the same in this universe. One time you think that this is the height that you want, another time you think this is the height. Sometimes you interview someone, so you want more of an angle. You want to be able to change. You don't want to be locked in a relationship that you cannot get out of with a teleprompter. It's not even a blonde. Microphone arms. I'm using the same microphone arm here. I actually don't remember the make of that arm, but I will find out and I will tell you. But the microphone that I'm using is the only microphone to use. I've tried different microphones. I'm using the Shure SM7B, the only microphone to use. It's an amazing microphone, but you need cloud lifter, which is a kind of an amplifier to actually push the very faint signal that it gives into the Apollo. Or alternatively, you need some kind of a preamplifier that can be done by software. I'm using a combination of two. The reason I'm using the cloud lifter is because it gives you a very clean input. Okay, the monitor. This monitor is monitoring the Atem Extreme, and it's obviously you can set it up as you want, but it's basically showing you what happened on each camera or on each input, what you're sending out. And specifically for the Atem Extreme, there's something that's called super source, which I'm using a lot. So I'm getting here the view of the super source. Super source basically is a tool that allows you to put a few inputs together, generally 4, but you can get to 6, and move them around and change them. So when you press a button, when I press this button, you'll see that if you look here, actually, when I press a button, it's changing and moving, and it's not just jumping abruptly. So this whole thing is done through macros, macros, macros. Easy, simple. You just need to understand simple, very, very simple few principles, and you can actually handle those macros. I will do probably a separate videos on macros. Now let's talk about the desk. The desk is a full hardwood, blah, 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 wonderful. The most important thing about this desk is, so what I've done here, I took an extension out from the bottom. And why is it? Because I needed to hold all kind of things. So I wanted on the one hand very thick desk, and on the other hand I wanted something that could be held, that is usually not as thick, and I didn't want to destroy the top of the desk. So when I need to drill something like I've drilled with these other arms, I didn't want to destroy the desk. So I just took an extension out, and everything is on that extension. So this is one, and let me show you the other one. And this is the other part. The other part, again, I have this extension here that comes underneath. It allows me place to run the cables, something to put stuff on, but the most important thing, all the holes, all the cables running, nothing go through the actual desk. So if in the future I want to change it, or it getting damaged, I just need to change this one piece of wood with a few screws underneath, release it, get something else, and the desk stays nice and clean and beautiful, like in the day that I was thinking about it. This whole thing work, other than the amazing view of heaven, Cape Town, is the atmosphere, is composed of few parts. Number one, everything is organized, everything has its place. Nothing sits randomly somewhere. Everything has its place. Every cable has its place. It's running in a specific place, straight. Everything has its place. That's number one. Number two, the lights. LEDs around, low lights. It gives this wow feeling. But all of that is almost nothing if the smell is not handled. And what I have here all kind of units that continuously, all day long, put out smell. Depends on my mood. Sometimes it's eucalyptus, sometimes it's orange, sometimes it's whatever. And candles that I turn on at night that also put out smells. And I have those things that I don't remember even how they call, but the smell. Unbelievable. Now to run this whole thing, of course, is Turkish coffee and nice music. And once all this thing comes together, you have wow. And with this kind of wow, you don't want to go to sleep. You just want to produce and produce and produce. And production makes you happy. And why does it make you happy? Because when you produce for someone else. And at that moment, when you do something for someone else, when you bring value to someone else, you help another. And that is your basic purpose, to help someone else. And what I gave you is how to set up the best, most amazing, most wow setup for webinars, for Zoom calls, for communicating to others on a massive level. Meir Ezra, thank you.